Welcome to Shatter.
Her friend said I would not survive a breakup, so she tried it. Lauren stood in the living room with her phone still in her hand, like she had just stepped out of a group chat and into a performance. The city lights from the balcony cut across her face, sharp and dramatic. She did not look angry. She looked coached. She said maybe we should take a break. She said sometimes a man needs to feel what he is about to lose. She said space could clarify things. I had just come back from a late meeting at one of our construction sites. Mud still on my boots. Blueprints rolled under my arm. The smell of concrete and dust followed me inside. I asked her if that was what she wanted. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she said her friends believed I had gotten too comfortable. They thought I would panic. They thought I would fight. She said maybe we should separate for a while so I could understand her value. I looked at her and told her we should not drag it out. The words landed differently than she expected. I could see it. Her shoulders shifted. The script in her head did not match the line I gave her. She said I was proving her point, that I was too calm, that I did not react like a leader. Earlier that evening, before I came home, I had walked past my office conference room and seen the lights still on. My operational director, Jason Reed, was inside. Lauren was there too. They were standing closer than a budget review required. When they noticed me, Jason stepped back first. Now she stood in front of me talking about space and growth and testing commitment. I told her if she needed a break, she should take it. She did not cry. She did not pack a bag. She just stared at me, waiting for the part where I would break. I did not. Lauren did not leave that night. She moved into the guest bedroom instead. Door closed, but not locked. It felt staged, like a scene meant to be noticed. In the kitchen, her phone kept lighting up with messages from the same 3 women who had been at brunch with her earlier that week. I had seen their stories online, wine glasses raised, captions about knowing your worth. The next morning, she walked through the house like a tenant testing new space. Calm. Measured. She said she would stay with a friend for a few days to clear her head. She said I should use the time to think about what I might lose. I told her I would. At the office, Jason was already in the conference room when I arrived. He greeted me with the same firm handshake he always used, steady eye contact, confident tone. He said the Northside development needed faster approvals. He said we were moving too cautiously and missing opportunities. He had been pushing that narrative for months. More aggressive financing, more leverage, bigger risks. During the meeting, he referred to me as conservative in front of the project managers. He said sometimes leadership required bold moves, not patience. I let him finish. After the meeting, I walked back toward my office and noticed Lauren's car still in the parking lot. She had told me she was heading to a friend's place. Her office at the media group was across town. I circled back quietly. The hallway lights were dimmed. The conference room door was closed. Through the glass, I saw movement. Jason stood close to the table. Lauren was seated on the edge of it. His hand rested on her waist in a way that had nothing to do with budgets or timelines. He leaned in first. She did not pull away. I did not open the door. I stepped back into the hallway, pulled out my phone, and sent a message to our external accounting firm requesting a full operational audit. I did not mention why. Then I walked into my office and closed the door. The auditors arrived 2 days later. Not loudly, not dramatically, just 2 professionals with laptops and polite smiles asking for access to financial records, vendor contracts, and internal approval logs. Jason looked surprised, but he recovered quickly. He said routine reviews were healthy for growth. Lauren did not come home that night. She posted a photo from a rooftop bar with her friends. The caption mentioned clarity and strength. In the reflection of the window behind her, I recognized the skyline near our office building. The following morning, one of the auditors asked me to step into my office. He showed me a series of payments routed through a subcontractor we had used on 3 projects. The invoices were inflated. The difference had been redirected to a consulting entity registered under a holding company. The holding company listed Jason Reed as a managing partner. The auditor did not accuse. He simply pointed at the numbers. In the afternoon, I requested access logs from our building's security system. As owner, I had clearance. The data showed late entries to the office after regular hours. Multiple nights. 2 key cards used consistently. Jason's and a temporary pass assigned to Lauren for PR coordination. I printed the logs and placed them in a folder. That evening, Lauren returned home briefly to collect more clothes. She said space was helping her see things more clearly. She said her friends were right, that sometimes distance forces a man to fight. I told her I was working on something important. She looked at me carefully, as if trying to read whether I had softened. I had not. After she left, I drafted a notice invoking the conflict of interest clause in our shareholder agreement. It allowed for mandatory buyout if a partner engaged in undisclosed competing or self-dealing activity. Jason had signed that agreement the day he joined my company. I scheduled a board meeting for the end of the week. No explanations, just an agenda. The board meeting was held in the same conference room where I had seen them together. Jason arrived confident. He wore the same tailored suit he used for investor pitches. He greeted the board members with easy charm, spoke about expansion opportunities, about scaling faster than competitors. He said the audit was likely to confirm that we were ready for aggressive growth. I let him finish. Then I handed each board member a folder. Inside were the inflated invoices, the payment trails, the registration documents for his consulting entity, and the building access logs. No commentary, just dates, signatures, transfers. Jason's expression did not change at first. He said the consulting fees were standard practice in the industry. He said operational leaders often structured incentives creatively. He tried to frame it as initiative. One of the board members asked why the entity had not been disclosed in quarterly filings. Jason glanced at me then. I did not speak. The auditor explained the discrepancy between vendor payments and actual service costs. Calm voice. Neutral tone. Numbers on paper. When the board chair referenced the conflict of interest clause in our shareholder agreement, Jason shifted in his seat for the first time. He said we could resolve this internally. He said public disputes would damage the company. I told him the clause was clear. Undisclosed self-dealing triggered a mandatory buyout at a predefined valuation formula. He realized then that I had not reacted emotionally to the breakup threat because I had already seen more than she knew. By afternoon, the vote was unanimous. Jason's equity would be repurchased under the terms he had once praised as smart protection. Security deactivated his access before evening. As he cleared his desk, Lauren walked into the office lobby. She had not expected to see him carrying a box. He told her we would talk later. He did not look at me on his way out. Lauren walked into my office without knocking. Her face was pale, but she held herself upright, as if posture alone could steady the situation. She asked why Jason was packing his things. She said someone in accounting told her there had been a vote. I told her the board had acted under the shareholder agreement. She asked what that meant. I handed her a copy of the conflict of interest clause with Jason's signature at the bottom. She read the first paragraph, then the second. Her eyes moved faster when she reached the part about mandatory buyout and immediate removal of operational authority. She said there had to be a misunderstanding. She said Jason had been working late to help the company grow. She said aggressive leadership was sometimes misread. I did not mention the conference room. I did not describe what I had seen through the glass. Instead, I slid the audit summary across the desk. Inflated invoices. Undisclosed entity. Payment trails. She did not touch the papers. She asked whether this was about her. I told her it was about my company. Outside my office window, I saw Jason in the parking lot speaking on his phone, pacing beside his car. He looked less certain now. The charisma that worked in meetings did not translate to consequences. Lauren's phone vibrated in her hand. She glanced at the screen and stepped away from my desk to answer it. Her voice lowered. She said she did not know this was coming. She said she thought we had more time. When she hung up, she looked at me differently. She asked whether I had planned all of this the night she suggested a break. I told her I had started planning the moment I realized I was being tested instead of respected. She stood there, waiting for anger, for accusation, for a scene she could explain to her friends. I gave her none. Then I told her I had already filed for divorce. She thought I was bluffing. I could see it in her face. She said people said things during arguments. She said filing papers was dramatic and unnecessary. She said we were only taking space. I opened my desk drawer and placed the stamped copy of the petition on the table between us. The case number was printed in the corner. Date filed. County seal. Her expression changed. She asked when I had done it. I told her I had scheduled the consultation the morning after she suggested the breakup. The filing followed once the audit confirmed what I needed to know. She said her friends had told her men panic when they are about to lose something valuable. She said the idea was to shake me awake. I told her I was awake. That evening, she did not go back to her friend's place. She stayed in the house, moving through rooms like someone measuring what might no longer be theirs. She tried to call Jason more than once. He did not answer. The next morning, I sent a company-wide message announcing that Jason Reed was no longer with the firm due to violations of internal policy. No details. No drama. Access credentials were updated. Vendor contracts reassigned. By afternoon, clients were calling me directly. They wanted reassurance that projects would continue without disruption. I told them they would. Lauren stood in the doorway of my office at home while I took those calls. She listened to my voice remain steady, calm, professional. When I hung up, she asked whether there was any way to pause the divorce. I told her the paperwork was already in motion. She said this had gotten out of control. She said it was supposed to be a test. I looked at her and told her tests end when someone refuses to participate. She had expected me to fight for her. Instead, I had removed both of them from my life in the same week. News travels faster than explanations. Within days, mutual friends were asking careful questions. Lauren's brunch circle stopped posting photos with her. The tone shifted from confident to cautious. One of them sent her a message that I happened to see on the kitchen counter when her phone lit up. It said no one expected things to escalate like this. Jason sent a formal request through his attorney disputing the buyout valuation. The letter accused me of acting hastily. It suggested negotiation. I responded through counsel with a copy of the signed shareholder agreement and the audit findings. The clause he had once called protection now locked him out of any leverage. The formula was clear. The numbers were final. At the office, the atmosphere steadied. Project managers moved forward. Vendors were reassured. I personally reviewed every pending contract that had passed through Jason's hands. Nothing dramatic, just quiet corrections. Lauren tried to speak to me more often. Not arguments. Conversations. She would stand in the doorway and say we had built something real. She said one mistake should not erase years. I did not ask her how many times the conference room lights had been left on after hours. One afternoon, she said Jason told her he believed I was too soft to run a company like mine. She said he had convinced her that stronger leadership meant sharper edges. She said she wanted to see whether I would finally fight. I told her I had fought, just not the way they expected. That evening, she received official service of the divorce papers. She held the envelope for a long time before opening it. There were no accusations inside. No details about infidelity. Only a request for equitable division and formal separation. She looked at me and asked whether I was protecting her reputation. I told her I was protecting my time. For the first time since the test began, she did not look certain of anything. Jason tried to reach me directly once. He waited in the parking lot outside the office as I arrived one morning. He approached without the usual confidence, hands in his coat pockets, posture tighter than before. He said we could settle this privately. He said mistakes were made on both sides. He suggested that airing internal matters would hurt everyone. I told him nothing had been aired. He asked whether Lauren had told me everything. The way he said it was meant to provoke something. I did not give him that. I told him the agreement was already in motion and that further communication should go through attorneys. He watched me walk past him and into the building. Inside, I met with our senior project managers and reassigned responsibilities that had once run through Jason's desk. There was no speech about betrayal, only clear instructions and revised timelines. The company adjusted. That evening, Lauren confronted me with her phone in her hand. She said Jason claimed I had orchestrated a trap. He told her I had been looking for a reason to push him out. He said the audit timing was too convenient. I told her audits are scheduled, not emotional. She asked whether I had known about them for months. I did not answer that directly. I simply told her I had seen enough to act. She stepped closer and said she had never meant for it to go this far. She said the idea of threatening a breakup was supposed to wake me up, not end everything. I told her some doors closed quietly when pushed. She said her friends thought I would beg. She said they believed men like me could not handle rejection. I asked her whether they were handling this better than she was. She had no response. Later that night, I began reviewing listings for a smaller house closer to our new development site. I did not tell her. Lauren's friends finally came over one evening. They sat in our living room like an intervention panel, wine glasses in hand, voices lowered but urgent. I stayed in my office down the hall, door open just enough to hear fragments. They told her this had spiraled. They said no one expected me to take the breakup seriously. One of them said I must have been waiting for an excuse. Another suggested I was overcompensating to prove something. Lauren defended me at first. She said I was not impulsive. She said I did not act without reason. Then the tone shifted. They asked whether she had actually been involved with Jason. The room went quiet for several seconds. She did not deny it. One of them stood up and said this was no longer a test. It was a choice. They left shortly after, not angry, just uncomfortable. Later that night, Lauren came into my office. She said Jason had stopped answering her calls completely. She said he blamed her for not warning him about the audit. She said he believed she should have known I would not react emotionally. I told her he underestimated more than one thing. She asked whether I had told anyone about them. I told her I had not needed to. The next morning, my attorney informed me that Jason had signed the buyout settlement without further dispute. His equity transfer would finalize within days. The company would be entirely mine again. In the afternoon, Lauren received notice from her HR department that questions had been raised about her presence at my office during late hours. No accusations, just inquiry. She sat at the kitchen table holding that email, the weight of it visible. She asked whether there was any path back. I told her the path had required honesty before strategy. She closed her eyes briefly. The test she had started was over. The consequences were not. The house felt different once the paperwork moved from threat to timeline. Jason's buyout finalized without ceremony. His name disappeared from our company filings as if it had never been there. Access credentials were permanently revoked. Vendor relationships stabilized. The projects continued. Lauren watched all of it unfold from the edge. She tried once more to talk before the mediation session. She stood in the kitchen where we used to plan vacations and guest lists, and she said she had misjudged what strength looked like. She said she thought pressure would force me to prove myself. She admitted she had believed Jason's version of leadership was more decisive. I told her leadership does not need an audience. She asked whether I had ever loved her enough to fight publicly for us. I told her I had loved her enough not to humiliate her when I could have. The divorce process moved quietly. No public statements. No accusations filed. Assets divided according to agreement. She kept the house. I kept the company intact. The day I moved into the smaller place near our new development site, she came by unannounced. The space was modest, unfinished in places, closer to concrete and steel than polished floors. She looked around as if trying to understand how easily I had adjusted. She said her friends no longer brought up the test. She said they had not expected me to accept the breakup so quickly. I told her I had accepted the truth faster than she expected. She stood in the doorway for a long moment. There were no dramatic pleas, no promises of change, just the weight of what had already been done. Before she left, she asked whether I regretted not fighting harder. I told her I did fight. I fought for my company, for my name, for the parts of my life that did not require someone to threaten departure to feel valuable. She nodded once. Then she walked back to her car, and this time, there was no test waiting on the other side.